The Wild West is frequently associated with images of gunfights, outlaws, and revelry. However, how much of this story is true? Come along as we examine how people actually lived on the American frontier as we dig into the West's realities. It's important to recognize that when the first European settlers arrived in the American West, it was already occupied, despite the myths perpetuated by popular history about how the West was subdued and settled. 1. Indigenous cultures. Generalizations regarding indigenous cultures are challenged by the varying climate of the West, yet each community uses natural resources in a unique way. Beside the Rocky Mountains and the Sierra Nevada lived tribes such as the Ute, Goshute, Mono, Paiute, Bannock, and Shoshone. These tribes' various approaches to fishing, hunting, and resource use were indicative of their highly different lifestyles. 2. Impact of settlers. According to recent research, the Dust Bowl was caused by the introduction of cattle and the railway by the settlers, who also contributed to soil erosion. In addition to changing the terrain, this put the wild bison, a vital resource for many tribes, in jeopardy. A large number of migrants traveled the Oregon Trail during the Wild West era, which approximately spanned from 1860 to the 1890s, in quest of new lands and resources. 3. Native American relations. Even with the support of indigenous groups, mistrust and anxiety among colonists occasionally resulted in violent conflicts. A dramatic example is the tragic story of the ill-fated Donner Party, who shot at Well-Mel-T tribal members who were seeking assistance. Conflicts between Native Americans and the U.S. Army, like the tragic massacre at Wounded Knee, were stoked by anti-Native propaganda. 4. Homestead Act and changing landscape. The Homestead Act of 1862 promoted westward migration by rewarding anyone who successfully lived and cultivated 160 acres of land for 5 years. On the plains after the Civil War ended in 1865, settlers, including former slaves and immigrants from Europe, sought out new lives. The Wild West reputation for lawlessness was exacerbated by the population boom and lax government regulation. 5. Challenges of settlement. The lack of wood for building was one of the difficulties of plains life. Dense turf was used to create sod houses, which were commonplace. These were not the best dwellings. They leaked frequently and were hard to maintain. Diseases, a lack of doctors, and poor hygiene led to creative remedies like the use of river clay and whitewash. 6. Townships and mining. Western towns were notorious for their violent past and tales of wealth gained and squandered through mining operations. Around precious metal strikes, mining communities like Tombstone grew. Railway towns, with their T-shaped layout, had to deal with problems like small living spaces and fires all the time. The good and bad social divisions formed these groups. 7. Women in the West. The anarchic environment in the West drew women who were looking to flee Victorian social mores. In the Wild West, women possessed greater autonomy and could take on a variety of jobs such as madams, gunslingers, merchants, and bounty hunters. Unconventional choices and lifestyles were made possible by the region's distinctive social atmosphere. 8. Cowboy culture. Mexican vaqueros influenced cowboys, who were essential in the cattle business in the West. Contrary to how they are portrayed in movies, cowboys were frequently poor, nomadic laborers who resided in bunkhouses. Cowboys were better at navigating the sparsely populated areas than other settlers, and the physically taxing cattle drives lasted for several months. 9. End of the Wild West era. The extensive usage of barbed wire and the severe winter of 1886 to 1887 signaled the end of the cowboy way of life. The 1890 Wounded Knee Massacre solidified U.S. government control over the West by forcing the remaining Native Americans onto reservations. The American frontier came to an end in 1895 when the majority of the West was settled. Learning about life in the Wild West reveals a diverse mosaic of cultures, difficulties, and adaptations. Our perception of America's frontier history is still shaped by the lingering legacy of this period, which includes its stories of resiliency and strife. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe for more engrossing discoveries if you like this trip down memory lane. We appreciate you coming along on this historical journey with us.